Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com and the Big Four Accounting Firms YouTube channel. Before we get started, just wanted to remind everybody to support us if you have a chance or if you can. Even $1 helps, and we have a link in the description to a website called Buy Me a Coffee. It's just a way to donate to us and support us. Again, any amount is helpful so that we can keep putting out content. And there's also other ways for you to support us in the show notes to this podcast or on YouTube in the description. In today's podcast, wanted to talk about Deloitte again. We're talking about Deloitte a lot, but that's okay. They're the largest accounting firm, so we learn a lot when we talk about them. But another reason I want to talk about Deloitte is I've been researching them for a book we're writing about Deloitte, like completely about Deloitte for people going through the recruiting process or just want to learn more about Deloitte as a potential employer. And it's going to have everything that I think a candidate should know about the accounting firm. And I'm specifically going to talk about the US here because I was just looking around the reports for Deloitte and ran across the global report. And off of that came a report about diversity. And I was looking, and the report I came across, which is kind of confusing, the Deloitte website is pretty confusing. It's a DEI transparency report, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And most people might actually know this as EDI, which is equality, diversity, and inclusion. But in the social justice world, it's no longer equality, it's equity. It's, one of these academic terms, and equality wasn't working out. And so, because you can't have equality when there's not an equal amount of people, and it's not about, it's just different. Plus also EDI, I think if you look it up, can also be, it also relates to data exchanges. So I think that's another reason they did this. One of the things that shows in this report is diversity over time, like their strategies over time. As long as I've been in the big four accounting firms, they've always talked about diversity and growing diversity, and it's never really happened. And Deloitte and the other big four accounting firms are actually developing reports around the globe. I saw something in this report that was pretty astonishing. So by 2025, Deloitte says that they want to increase the number of Black and Hispanic professionals. Oh, and they also have the Latinx, which I know a lot of people find offensive because all these equality groups just made that term up out of nowhere. But Deloitte wants to increase the number of Black and Hispanic / Latinx. I'm not sure what the difference between Hispanic and Latinx is, but it says increase the number of Black and Hispanic professionals in our U.S. workforce by 50%. And this is an input to our goal of increasing the overall racial and ethnic diversity of our U.S. workforce to 48% by 2025. And they also want to increase the U.S. workforce female representation to 45% by 2025, and increase the representation of racially and ethnically diverse U.S. partners, principals, managing directors to 25% by 2025. And they put this in various reports on their website. And I found the one that I initially found where I see the 50%, 48%. And here they have a bunch of asterisks, basically footnotes, because they have to be very careful here because these are some pretty lofty goals, but we also have to define some terms. So they want to increase overall racial and ethnic diversity to 48% by 2025. And this is in the United States, but I'm sure this will be similar across the world. So they define ethnic diversity by its diverse racial and ethnic groups include Asian, American Indian and Alaska Native, Black, Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander, and those who identify as multiracial, and professionals whose ethnicity is Hispanic/Latinx. Now, it might be difficult for people whose ethnicity is Latinx since that term was recently invented. So I'm sure most people will be identifying as Hispanic. But also, a wrench can be thrown into this in the United States because you don't have to identify yourself when you work. I mean, you can't. I think there's an optional thing there, so that could throw a wrench in there too. But if you have any of these ethnicities or races in your background, and you're trying to get a job at Deloitte, then you better identify it because that's going to be helpful. But I see a really big problem coming for Deloitte here. And I don't know if it'll be a problem since there's so much social justice going on, but this is in the goals section for Deloitte. And this is obviously important to them when they're doing this EDI and ESG stuff, all the social justice, climate change, everything. It's important for them to put out these reports and put out these goals. But they also have to be careful because some of the stuff they're going into is illegal. And it's illegal because it's illegal to have racial quotas. Because in order to have racial quotas, you have to discriminate against races. So what Deloitte does is they put another footnote here, and it says that goals are not quotas. The policy of each Deloitte U.S. firm is to seek and employ people with skill and integrity and to provide them with means to develop professionally without regards to race, color, religion, creed, citizenship, national origin, age, sex, gender, pregnancy, gender identity or expression, sexual orientation, marital status, disability, genetic information. I don't even know what that means. Veteran status or any other legally protected basis in accordance with the applicable federal, state, or local law. So that right there shows you that they're afraid of lawsuits. And I'm sure them going down this path is already opening them up to lawsuits because it's not like Deloitte and these accounting firms haven't tried to get more diversity in the past. Ever since I joined the accounting firms, they've always been trying to increase diversity, but they can't because you can't force people to go into accounting. So basically what they're saying here in all these diversity and equity goals in the United States is they're trying to get more non-white people into the accounting firms. Well, in order for that to happen, they're going to and meet these quotas. They're going to have to either hire less white people or increase the number of racially and ethnically diverse people into the firm above the amount that they recruit white people. And I don't know how they're going to do that unless they really are going to put tons of investment into schools and getting racially and ethnically diverse people into accounting, because it's difficult to get anybody into accounting. And it's difficult based on the population makeup of the United States. So Deloitte is going to have to be very careful in this respect. And I feel like they've already initiated some lawsuits just by putting this out there and saying that there's no quotas. It sounds like a racial quota to me. So I think and I think it's important for people that are recruiting, that are going through recruiting, to know this information, to know that's in your favor. If you're racially or ethnically diverse or you're a female, then make sure to identify as such on your applications, because Deloitte is looking for these demographics. And if you have friends that are in these demographics and they're not sure about what career to go into, well, I can tell you right now, accounting is a heck of a career for them, because Deloitte is going to do everything they can to meet these goals. But also, if you're not in these demographics, then you're going to be bumping up against what looks to me like a quota, sounds to me like a quota. I don't know how you meet this unless you discriminate against white people. I don't know how you do that. It's just the makeup of the U.S. population is not working in Deloitte's favors. And as accountants, they should have probably done that math before they put all this out there. I'll be very interested to see where this goes. And actually, I know where this is going to end up. It's going to end up where it's always ended up, where Deloitte doesn't meet these goals. And the accounting firms don't meet these goals. They just don't put enough investment in the front end for this to work. They try, don't get me wrong. They try, but they just the way they approach it, it never works out. The accounting firms aren't set up. The accounting firms aren't set up to really keep people long term to start with, let alone to harness what they're trying to do here racially. So in my opinion, in 4 years for them to get here is ridiculous. Maybe 20 years, 10 or 20 years, because there's investments that need to be made on the front end that they have not done. They probably have not made accounting or consulting appealing to these demographics. And is it up to them to do that? I don't know. But if you are trying to meet these extremely lofty goals, then I think they do have to approach it from the front end. But I was just preparing my research for the book that I'm putting together, and I ran across this, and I think it's important for recruiting for people to know this, but I ran across this, and I think it's very interesting for people to know, and that's why I wanted to bring it up. So that's the podcast for today. To get future updates, make sure to subscribe to this podcast. Make sure to support us financially through the Buy Me a Coffee link. Also, just make sure to check out the show notes to our podcast, because that's where I'm going to be putting links where you can help us. I'm going to be putting, once I finish the book about Deloitte, I'm going to be putting the link there. We have links to other books and courses in there as well. So make sure to check that out. Thanks for listening.